She thought she'd escaped a dull marriage for a life of luxury with a billionaire, but just 7 days after stepping onto his private island, she was found dead. What happened in that final week reveals a nightmare hidden behind wealth, power, and secrets no one was ever meant to uncover. This is the chilling story of how a dream life became a deadly trap. Marisa Lane's life changed in a single afternoon, though no one in her small coastal town realized how fast everything was about to unravel. She had always lived quietly, working at a local boutique and keeping to herself. Her marriage to Daniel had grown dull, but nothing suggested she was preparing for a dramatic escape. That made it even more shocking when a sleek black car pulled up outside her home, followed by the arrival of a private jet waiting at the city airstrip. Within hours, she was gone. Neighbors saw her carrying only 2 suitcases, leaving behind her favorite belongings, family heirlooms, and the sentimental items she never traveled without. The sight felt strange, rushed, and out of character. Marisa moved with a tense determination that suggested a decision made quickly and without second thoughts. Her departure was linked to Victor Hale, an Australian billionaire whose wealth was matched only by the mystery surrounding him. He had been visiting the region for a private investment project, and rumors spread that he and Marisa had met during one of his unannounced visits. People speculated that he offered her a lifestyle she had never imagined, private villas, exclusive travel, and a level of freedom she believed she lacked. But behind the excitement that others imagined, there was an unsettling silence in Marisa's actions. She didn't notify her friends, didn't leave a message, and didn't explain anything to her husband. She simply vanished into Victor's orbit without looking back. As the jet lifted into the sky, Marisa stared out the window at the coastline fading below her. The town she had known her whole life shrank into a blur, becoming something she would never see again. Her decision felt like a leap toward a new beginning, unaware that it was instead the start of a countdown leading to her final 7 days. Victor Hale lived in a world built on wealth, distance, and precise control, a world far different from the polished image the public believed. Articles praised his investments and generosity, yet almost nothing was known about his personal life. He avoided interviews, kept his schedule private, and appeared only when necessary. Those who worked for him rarely stayed long, and their departures were often sudden. Former employees described an atmosphere shaped by strict rules, constant monitoring, and a sense that every movement was silently recorded. Each property Victor owned functioned less like a home and more like a controlled facility. Surveillance systems tracked activity in real time, biometric locks restricted movement, and private security teams enforced boundaries without question. Guests were rare, and when they visited, their access was limited to specific rooms. Victor preferred environments where unpredictability was eliminated, and he designed his lifestyle around maintaining that security. To outside observers, his habits appeared disciplined and guarded. To those inside his circle, they felt rigid and unsettling. Staff members lived under detailed protocols that dictated how they behaved, what they said, and where they were allowed to go. Anyone who questioned these rules quietly disappeared from his employment records. Marisa entered this world believing Victor's quiet nature reflected caution or shyness, unaware of the network of surveillance surrounding her. She didn't notice how he watched her reactions or measured her decisions. What she interpreted as curiosity was actually assessment. Victor approached every relationship as a controlled arrangement, deciding how each person fit into his system. Once Marisa stepped into his domain, she became part of that structure, observed and catalogued. Victor's private island came into view like a perfect dream, untouched and surrounded by endless blue water. As the helicopter descended, Marisa saw white beaches, dense green trees, and modern villas arranged with deliberate precision. Everything looked peaceful and luxurious, as if crafted to impress anyone who arrived for the first time. When she stepped onto the landing pad, the air felt warm and clean, and the quietness of the island created an immediate sense of isolation. She believed she had entered a paradise far removed from her old life. The staff welcomed her with professional politeness, moving with smooth, practiced motions. Their expressions were calm, yet strangely distant, as though they were following rules she couldn't see. Marisa assumed their formality came from working for someone as wealthy as Victor. She didn't notice how carefully they avoided conversation or how quickly they stepped back whenever Victor approached. Her villa was beautiful, designed with glass walls that overlooked the ocean. The interior was filled with elegant furniture arranged perfectly, almost like a display rather than a home. Yet beneath the beauty, Marisa sensed an unusual stillness in the rooms. Her phone lost service immediately, and the communication system in the villa connected only to staff members, not the outside world. She assumed it was normal for a remote island, never considering the possibility that the isolation was intentional. While exploring the area, she encountered locked doors and paths marked as restricted. Staff members gently redirected her when she wandered too far, explaining nothing. As she walked the shoreline later, she noticed cameras disguised as decorative fixtures. None of it alarmed her yet, but the island was already shaping itself around her, quietly limiting where she could go and what she could know. Daniel Lane's life fell apart the moment he realized Marisa was gone. At first, he thought she had stepped out for errands, but the untouched coffee mug on the counter and the silent phone on the table told a different story. Hours passed with no message, no explanation, and no sign of her return. When he checked their bedroom, he noticed her favorite belongings still in place, jewelry she never traveled without, personal documents she always kept close, and the notebook she filled with daily reminders. The missing suitcases didn't make sense, but the items left behind made even less. Nothing about her departure felt planned. As the day continued, Daniel learned from a neighbor that Marisa had been seen getting into an unfamiliar luxury car earlier that morning. The news felt like a blow. He tried calling friends, family members, and co-workers, but no one knew anything. The more he searched for answers, the more he felt an unsettling certainty that something was deeply wrong. Marisa wasn't careless. She didn't disappear without informing someone. Her sudden absence felt unnatural, as if she had been swept away before she could think clearly. When Daniel reported her missing, authorities treated the situation as a voluntary departure. They pointed to the suitcases, the private jet records, and the name Victor Hale, an extremely wealthy man with no criminal history. They assumed Marisa had simply chosen a different life. Their calm, dismissive responses frustrated Daniel, who knew her habits better than anyone. Marisa had left behind the documents required for international travel, making the story of a willing escape unlikely. Days passed without progress. The case remained inactive, and Daniel's concerns intensified. He sensed that Marisa hadn't just walked away, she had entered the life of a man whose influence could erase anyone's trail. Victor's behavior shifted noticeably within days of Marisa settling into life on the island. At first, he maintained the polished charm that had drawn her in, moving with calm confidence and offering the kind of attention she had rarely experienced. But slowly, small changes began to appear. He became quieter, more observant, and increasingly focused on where she went and how she spent her time. The warmth in his expression faded, replaced by a watchfulness that felt more analytical than affectionate. Marisa sensed the atmosphere tightening around her, though she couldn't explain why. The staff's behavior deepened her unease. They avoided unnecessary interaction, stepping aside quickly when she passed. Their actions were precise, controlled, and carried a hint of fear she couldn't understand. They seemed especially cautious whenever Victor entered a room, lowering their eyes and keeping movements minimal. Marisa noticed how none of them ever relaxed, even for a moment, and how their polite responses revealed nothing about the island or its routines. As she tried to explore more of the property, she discovered that many areas were off-limits. Doors that appeared decorative wouldn't open. Paths curved toward locked gates or security panels. Whenever she unknowingly approached a restricted area, a staff member would appear almost immediately to redirect her. Each small boundary created a growing sense of confinement. By the fifth day, Victor's behavior became unpredictable. He shifted between silence and sudden intensity, watching Marisa as if evaluating her every reaction. The calm charm he had shown before seemed to dissolve, revealing a colder, controlled personality beneath it. Marisa realized that she had entered a world ruled by strict rules and hidden expectations, one where Victor's pleasant exterior had been only a mask, and the true nature of her situation was becoming harder to ignore. Marisa's growing unease pushed her to explore the villa more carefully, searching for something that might explain the strange tension surrounding her. On the sixth day, she noticed a narrow door near the end of a hallway, partially hidden behind a decorative panel. It was slightly ajar, almost as if someone had forgotten to close it. The staff normally kept every area spotless and controlled, so the small oversight stood out. Curiosity overcame caution, and she stepped inside, entering a dim storage room that smelled faintly of dust and old air. The space looked ordinary at first, filled with shelves and locked cabinets, but a closer look revealed items that did not belong together. In a corner, Marisa saw a collection of personal belongings arranged in careful rows. There were phones, passports, wallets, cosmetics, and pieces of jewelry, items that appeared too personal to be leftovers from staff or guests. Each object had a small label with a date written on it. The dates covered several years, all ending abruptly without explanation. The belongings looked untouched, as if their owners had simply vanished and their items had been quietly stored away. Marisa's pulse quickened as she realized none of the names on the passports were familiar to her. These women had never been mentioned by Victor, nor had she seen any sign of previous guests on the island. The room's silence felt heavy, as if it held stories no one was allowed to tell. Every item suggested a life interrupted and removed from the world without notice. Marisa understood that she had stumbled onto something she was never meant to see. The sense of danger grew sharper, settling into her thoughts with alarming clarity. She realized the island was not a sanctuary but a trap, and Victor's world had consumed others long before her arrival. Marisa spent the night after her discovery in a state of silent panic, unable to sleep as the weight of realization pressed down on her. Every sound in the villa felt amplified. The subtle hum of the security system, the distant footsteps of staff members, and the faint movement of branches outside created an atmosphere thick with dread. She understood that staying meant waiting for her fate to match the pattern she had uncovered. By dawn, her fear had transformed into a desperate determination. She knew she had to escape the island before her time ran out. A heavy storm rolled in by mid-morning, darkening the sky and shaking the palm trees with sharp gusts of wind. The bad weather offered the cover she needed. When the staff shifted their attention to securing the outdoor areas, Marisa slipped out of the villa and headed toward the docks. Rain soaked her clothes within minutes, but the downpour helped blur her figure from distant cameras. The path became slippery, making every step dangerous, yet she pushed forward with a single goal: reaching the only boat that could take her off the island. As she approached the dock, the crashing waves nearly drowned out the alarm that suddenly blared across the island. The cameras had spotted her. The staff reacted immediately, running toward her from different directions. Marisa reached the boat and struggled with the ropes, her hands shaking too violently to free them. The storm intensified, lightning cutting across the sky as the staff closed in. They grabbed her before she could make another move, dragging her away from the water and back toward the main villa. Her strength faded as she was forced inside. Victor did not appear right away. Instead, the staff confined her to a secure room where fear overtook her completely. The final 24 hours of her life had begun, and there was no longer any path left to freedom. Marisa's body was discovered early the next morning, lying at the base of a jagged coral cliff on the far edge of the island. The location was remote, difficult to reach even in calm weather, and bordered by sharp rocks that rose unpredictably from the ocean. The staff claimed they found her during a routine perimeter check, though no checks had ever been mentioned before. The scene looked grim, but something about it felt unnaturally arranged. Her injury suggested a fall from a significant height, yet the details surrounding her condition raised immediate questions. Her clothes were dry despite the storm that had lasted through the night. Her feet were clean, without the sand or mud expected from someone walking across the island's uneven terrain. There was no evidence of water in her lungs, weakening the idea that she had slipped into the ocean and washed ashore. Even more troubling was the absence of footprints or drag marks on the cliff's surface. It was as if she had been placed there rather than discovered where she fell. The staff repeated the same explanation in rehearsed tones, insisting she had gone for a walk and misjudged the cliff's edge. Victor emerged hours later, appearing calm and composed. He presented the authorities with a brief statement describing the death as a tragic accident. His expression remained unreadable, and he offered no sign of distress. The staff stood around him in silent formation, reinforcing his version of events without hesitation. Their identical stories left no room for alternative interpretations, at least on the surface. The island's security systems, which monitored every corner of the property, produced no footage of Marisa leaving the villa or approaching the cliff. Victor claimed the cameras malfunctioned during the storm, leaving a convenient gap in the timeline. With no witnesses and a carefully staged scene, the truth of Marisa's final moments remained hidden behind layers of control and deception. The investigation into Marisa's death began under tight restrictions, shaped almost entirely by the narrative Victor presented. When authorities arrived on the island, they were met by his legal team, who immediately set boundaries on where they could go and what they were allowed to examine. Investigators were escorted at all times, guided only through carefully selected areas that appeared clean, orderly, and free of anything suspicious. Staff members repeated the same rehearsed statements, offering no personal observations or useful details. Their coordinated answers made the investigation feel controlled rather than cooperative. Daniel, overwhelmed by grief and suspicion, pushed for a deeper inquiry. He contacted officials daily, pointing out the inconsistencies surrounding Marisa's departure, her left-behind belongings, and the unexplained condition of her body. His concerns were acknowledged but not acted upon. Victor's wealth and influence formed a protective barrier, making it difficult for authorities to question his version of events or gain access to restricted areas. The island's private status added another layer of limitation, preventing investigators from exploring the property freely. What investigators were allowed to see supported the claim of an accidental fall. The cliff showed no clear signs of struggle. The villa appeared undisturbed. The missing security footage was blamed on storm damage, conveniently removing the final hours of Marisa's life from the record. Without direct evidence to contradict Victor's account, the official report leaned toward the simplest explanation. Daniel refused to accept the conclusion, but every attempt to challenge it was blocked. Weeks passed, momentum faded, and unanswered questions piled up. The case was quietly closed, leaving the truth hidden behind influence, secrecy, and a system designed to protect Victor from scrutiny. In the years following Marisa's death, the truth remained locked behind walls of power, money, and silence. Public attention faded, officials moved on to other cases, and the world accepted the official explanation without demanding more. Victor continued his life without visible consequences, carefully preserving his public image and maintaining the same controlled environment that had shielded him from scrutiny. His properties remained heavily guarded, his routines unchanged, and the same tight circle of employees continued to manage every aspect of his world. Daniel, however, could not let the case go. He devoted his time to collecting overlooked details, speaking with anyone who had interacted with Marisa in her final days, and reviewing every fragment of information he could find. Despite his efforts, each path led to the same dead ends, missing footage, unreachable witnesses, and inconsistencies that no authority seemed interested in revisiting. His determination only highlighted how effectively the truth had been buried. Whispers about Marisa's final week began circulating within Victor's former staff, creating quiet pressure around his reputation. Some employees resigned, uneasy about what they had witnessed but still too afraid to speak openly. Rumors suggested that Marisa's relationship with Victor had grown tense, that she had discovered something unsettling, and that she may have tried to leave before her death. Yet none of these suggestions came with proof strong enough to trigger a reopening of the case. As time passed, Marisa's story became another unsolved tragedy, discussed online, debated in forums, and remembered by those who believed there was more to the truth. The unanswered questions remained: what really happened in the final hours of her life, and why had every piece of evidence that could explain it disappeared? Her death lingered as a silent warning about power, isolation, and secrets that never reached the surface.